Thank you. Thank you. Tonight on the show, Robert Corniero and Sarah Heyerdahl. We'll talk about states. What are they? We'll start with you, Robert. What are the attributes of states? In other words, how do we know something is a state, rather than a chiefdom?
There are several attributes, or characteristics, of states. First, a state controls a specific region or territory. 2. Early states had productive farming economies, supporting dense populations.
Often these populations were nucleated in cities. The farming economies usually involved some form of water control or irrigation.
3. Early states used tribute and taxation to accumulate, at a central place, the resources needed to support hundreds, or thousands, of specialists. 4. States are stratified into social classes, for example, elites, commoners, and slaves. 5. Early states had imposing public buildings and architecture, including temples, palaces, and storehouses. And 6. Early states developed some form of record-keeping system, usually in a written script.
I especially wanted to ask you about state formation in the Middle East. What was urban life like 10,000 years ago?
As you know, Larry, the first towns arose around 10,000 years ago in the Middle East. The earliest known town was Jericho, located in modern Israel.
Wasn't Jericho settled by the Natufians around 11,000 BP?
Yes, that's right, Larry. Around 9,000 BP, the town was destroyed. It was rebuilt with square houses that had plaster floors and burial chambers beneath the floors.
Really? They buried their dead under the floors of their houses?
Indeed, they did. They also removed the skulls and made faces for them out of plaster. Then they would use the skulls, probably in funerary ceremonies or other rituals. Pottery first appears at Jericho around 8,000 years ago.
Talk to me about Çatalhöyük. It's in present-day Turkey, isn't it?
Yes. Çatalhöyük is a site located in the central part of modern Turkey, which prospered through long-distance trade. It was possibly the largest settlement of the Neolithic. It flourished between 8,000 and 7,000 years ago, with up to 10,000 people living at the site.
People lived in square mud brick dwellings that had separate areas for secular and ritual activities.
Ritual spaces were decorated with images and motifs of oxen.
Did the residents of Çatalhöyük bury their dead under their floors, like the people of Jericho?
Yes, they did, Larry. 2 or 3 generations of a family were buried beneath their houses. After 2 or 3 generations of burials, the dwelling was burned.
Amazing. So, was Çatalhöyük a state?
No, it doesn't seem to be the case. Çatalhöyük shows no signs of state-level socio-political organization.
You mentioned that social ranking, or social stratification, is a characteristic of state-level societies. Does social ranking appear first in state societies?
No, social ranking first appears in chiefdoms.
Were there any societies in which there were no social statuses or ranking?
These distinctions were first described by the anthropologist Morton Fried in 1959. He divided societies into 3 types: egalitarian, ranked and stratified, based on the kinds of status distinctions within society.
Egalitarian societies are most typically found among foragers. These societies lack status distinctions except for those based on age, gender, and individual qualities, talents, and achievements. Status distinctions are usually not inherited, but people achieve different statuses through the course of their lifetime.
I see.
Ranked societies have hereditary inequality, but lack social stratification. There is a continuum of status, with individuals tending to be ranked in terms of their genealogical distance from the chief. Not all ranked societies are chiefdoms, only those in which there is a loss of village autonomy.
A chiefdom is a ranked society in which relations among villages as well as individuals are unequal. In Mesopotamia, Mesoamerica, and Peru, primary states submerged from competition among chiefdoms, as one chiefdom managed to conquer its neighbors and integrate them into a larger political unit.
Chiefdoms first appeared in the Middle East around 7,300 years ago and in Mesoamerica around 3,000 years ago.
How can we tell if an ancient society was a chiefdom?
One of the archaeological markers of chiefdoms is the presence of wealthy burials of children too young to have achieved or earned prestige of their own but who were born into elite families. Other clues of the existence of chiefdoms that we can see archaeologically include the presence of a common canal to irrigate several villages, and the emergence of a two-tier settlement hierarchy, with small villages clustering around a large village that has public buildings.
Like Cahokia, in what is now Illinois.
Yes, exactly.
In the Middle East, excavations at Tel Hamukar, dating to more than 5,500 years ago, suggest that advanced chiefdoms arose in northern areas of the Middle East independently of developments in southern Mesopotamia. The Tel Hamukar site covers 32 acres that, by 5,700 years ago, were surrounded by a defensive wall.
There is evidence at Tel Hamukar of large-scale food storage and preparation, which indicates that its elites were hosting and entertaining in the manner of a chief.
Excavators have also uncovered an array of seals used to mark storage containers as well as stamp more elaborate goods with a mark of administrative authority.
When did the first major cities appear in Mesopotamia?
They first appear in the area during what is called the Uruk period, between 6,000 and 5,200 years ago.
Economies were managed by a central leadership as travel and trade expanded, and a rising population, plus increased food production, changed the social landscape.
Southern Mesopotamians migrated north, creating and expanding settlements in what is now Syria and Turkey.
Is this when the first writing appears in the area?
Yes. Writing was first developed in Sumer, in southern Mesopotamia. It was initially used to develop and handle administrative accounts and record-keeping for a centralized economy, reflecting the needs of trade.
The first kind of writing in Mesopotamia is called cuneiform. Mesopotamian priests managed herding, farming, manufacture, and trade, and after writing was invented, in 5600 BP, priests used cuneiform writing to keep track of temples' economic activities.
How about metallurgy? Wasn't it invented around this time?
Yes. Metallurgy, the knowledge of the properties of metals, including their extraction and processing and the manufacture of metal tools, does begin at this time. The discovery of smelting, the process of using high temperatures to extract pure metal from an ore, aided the rapid development of metallurgy after 5,000 years ago.
The Bronze Age began when alloys of arsenic and copper, or tin and copper, became common and greatly extended the use of metals.
The Iron Age began once high-temperature iron smelting was mastered. In the Old World, after 3,200 years ago, the use of iron spread rapidly.
How are states in Mesopotamia different during the Bronze Age?
Large populations were densely concentrated in walled cities during the Bronze Age. Secular authority replaced temple rule around 4,600 years ago. And a well-defined class structure, with a complex stratification of nobles, commoners, and slaves, was present by 4,600 years ago.
Were there any states in Asia at this time?
The Indus River Valley, located in modern northwestern India and Pakistan, was the site of a state between 4,600 and 3,900 years ago. The Indus River Valley, or Harappan state, incorporated at its peak 1,000 cities, towns, and villages, spanning 280,000 square miles.
The major cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, exhibited urban planning with carefully laid out wastewater systems and residential sectors, as well as evidence of social stratification.
But there is no scientific evidence of space aliens having a nuclear war over the area, as some have postulated.
Are you sure?
Quite sure. Ha. The Indus civilization developed its own writing system, which has yet to be deciphered. Around 3,900 years ago, the Indus River Valley state collapsed, apparently through warfare.
Ha ha.
Ha ha.
The first Chinese state was during the Shang dynasty, 3,750 years ago. The Shang state was characterized by urbanism, palaces, human sacrifice, and distinct social classes.
The Shang state developed its own writing system,
The Shang state is well known for its bronze metallurgy.
Tell me about African states.
Egypt developed as one of the world's first states, with the Egyptian influence extending south along the Nile into what is now Sudan.
Many states developed in sub-Saharan Africa. The Mesoamerica Empire and, later, the Great Zimbabwe state, which arose around 700 BP, developed in what is now Zimbabwe. The Mesoamerica kingdom emerged through powerful trade networks. The capital city of the Great Zimbabwe state was protected by a stone enclosure.
The kingdoms of Ghana, Mali, Songhay, Ankara and Bornu emerged in the Sahel region of Western Africa. This area is rich in gold, precious metals, ivory and other resources that were extensively traded after 1,250 years ago. Cities in the Sahel also served as southern terminal points for trans-Saharan trade. The ancient kingdom of Ghana was the first state to form in this region, abetted by trade.
Benin, which thrived between 600 and 500 BP, developed in what is now southern Nigeria. Benin was known for its artistic creativity, expressed in terracotta, ivory, and brass sculpture.
Now we all know there was a state-level society in Mesoamerica. It was the Maya, wasn't it?
Mayan society came a little later. First we find the Olmec, Zapotec, and Teotihuacan states.
The Olmec chiefdoms flourished between 3,200 and 2,500 years ago. The chiefdom centers consisted of large earthen mounds arranged around a central plaza, demonstrating their chiefs' ability to harness human labor for large construction projects. The Olmec also carved large stone heads, perhaps as images of their chiefs or ancestors. And no, Robert, they don't depict images of space aliens. By 2500 BP, the city of Monte Alban, in the valley of Osaka, was founded as the capital of the Zapotec state.
Tell me about Teotihuacan, in the Valley of Mexico.
The city of Teotihuacan flourished between 1900 and 1300 BP. That's AD 100 to 700 if you're using calendar years. After 2500 BP, changes in maize cultivation, such as the development of a strain with a shorter growing season, and an irrigation system allowed small-scale cultivation to take place in the relatively northern valley of Mexico.
By the beginning of the Common Era, a settlement hierarchy, with communities of different size, function, and types of structures, had emerged with the religious center, Teotihuacan, at the top of the hierarchy, smaller cities between, and rural farming outposts at the bottom. The four-tiered settlement hierarchy here is considered evidence of its state's organization.
In the case of Teotihuacan, this pattern was associated with intensive, irrigation-based agriculture. After its peak, Teotihuacan experienced a rapid decline in size and power, and its population dispersed. It was succeeded by the Lesser Toltec state, from AD 900 to 1200, and then by the Aztecs. As agriculture intensified, trade networks expanded, and immigration brought greater population growth to the valley between 1200 and 1520 AD. The basis for the Aztec state developed.
Something that always bothered me is, why do states collapse?
There are a couple of theories about this.
The factors contributing to state collapse may include invasion, disease, and prolonged drought.
The archaeological record demonstrates cases in which environmental degradation may have contributed to states' decline. In ancient Mesopotamia, as water evaporated from irrigation canals, waterborne salts became concentrated in the fields, eventually creating a poisonous environment for plants.
Mashkin Shapur, a Mesopotamian city that was connected to the Tigris River, was abandoned just 20 years after it was settled. The destruction of its fields by mineral salts appears to have been a prime factor in its collapse.
Wow. 20 years is not a long time.
The Mayan state, during the Classic period, flourished between AD 300 and 900, in what is now southern Mexico, Guatemala, western Honduras, Belize, and El Salvador.
Archaeological clues to the Mayan decline have been found at Copane in western Honduras. Copane was the largest site in the southeastern region of the Maya area.
The last inscribed, but unfinished, monument has the date of AD 822, and it is believed that the site was abandoned by AD 830. Copane's collapse has been linked to erosion, soil exhaustion, and overpopulation. At Capane, 80% of the buried skeletons show signs of anemia, and skeletal evidence suggests that all the people living there, including the nobility, suffered from malnourishment.
They starved?
Yes. Increased warfare and political competition also destabilized the Mayan state. The archaeological record shows a concern with fortifications, moats, ditches, walls, and palisades, just before the Mayan state collapse. In this time period, some structures were burned, some sites were abandoned, and bodily remains show signs of violence. Mayan texts document competition and warfare between dynasties jockeying for position and power.
Wow. Well, this has been very interesting and exciting. Thanks to my guests, Robert Carniero and Sarah Heyerdahl.